So for our audience who hasn't read the series or seen the movies, can you give us a brief synopsis of the Divergent series?
Yes, so the series centers around Tris, who's a young woman who grows up in a city, dystopian Chicago, which is divided into 5 factions, and each one is dedicated to cultivating a virtue in its members. So the virtues are selflessness, bravery, intelligence, honesty, and kindness. She grows up trying to learn to be selfless, but feels really restrained by that faction, and she chooses Dauntless, which is the brave, risk-taking one. And then everything kind of unravels, and in Insurgent, we're dealing with her dealing with the aftermath of what happened at the end of the first movie, and trying to deal with what's happening in her kind of like crumbling world.
Now, you mentioned that it's set in Chicago. Can you talk about why Chicago is an ideal location for this dystopian universe?
Well, I think mostly it's set there because I love it there. And when I wrote here, and when I wrote the rough draft, I didn't really set it in any place in particular. I had these trains that were above ground and running all the time, and this lake or this marsh that had been a lake at one time, and I realized I had set it in Chicago without really meaning to, just because that's like the place that I love. But I think there's something special about Chicago in that it's beautiful, the architecture is wonderful, it's kind of a clean city generally, like comparatively, and so just kind of destroying it and making it into a dystopian playground was really fun, and I think it's not as common a place to set books, so it was fresh in that way to me.
So what would you say are some of the challenging and rewarding aspects of having a book turn into a movie?
Well, it's always a little weird to give your work over to someone else to adapt. You have to let go of it a little bit and understand that someone else's vision is going to be kind of going through it. So that's a challenge. I mean, that's a new mindset to take on. But the rewarding thing is first that it brings the books to new readers. I mean, there's nothing like a movie to propel people toward a book, which is great. I mean, I've gotten a lot more diverse range of people interested in reading my work. So for me, that's perfect. But it's also just great to work with new people who are passionate about what was once, only in your brain. Mm-hmm. So it's been a really special experience and not one I ever really thought that I would get to have.
So the story in itself is very unique and very creative. So can you talk about what inspired it? Like, how did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so I was a freshman in college and I was taking Psych 101. I was learning about exposure therapy, which is a method of treating anxiety in which someone is repeatedly exposed in a safe environment to what provokes their fear until they become habituated to it. So by repeatedly encountering fear, you're able to overcome fear. And I think that that's a really interesting idea. So I wanted to use it in a science fiction context, which is where there's a lot of these kind of nightmarish simulations in which Tris, our main character, is constantly encountering what scares her. And that continues into the second movie. So that's kind of where the spark of the idea was.
So with the different factions, which faction do you think you belong to?
Oh gosh, God, I would hate to be a part of any of them really. But I think I'd probably choose abnegation, which is a selfless one, because I think that that's really important. But I would totally defect and become one of the factionless, those disenfranchised people on the fringes, because I think that would be the place in this world where you could get the most freedom. So factionless all the way.
So which character would you say you relate to most throughout the movie?
I think I relate a little bit to all of them. I wouldn't be able to empathize with them or really engage with them if they didn't have little pieces of me in them. So I don't know if I relate to one in particular more than others, but I have a lot of affection for, like special affection for some of them, like Caleb and Evelyn and Tobias, of course. But Tris is my favorite. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't have written 3 books about her, probably.
So what do you want fans to walk away with after they see Insurgent?
Well, I guess I just hope they walk away with the feeling that the movie did the book justice, if they're readers. But also, I mean, I think it's a pretty tense and exciting film. After I saw it, I had to kind of do stretches. So it's some great action, but there's also an emotional undercurrent, with Tris and her struggles and learning to forgive herself and stuff like that. So hopefully, that balance is good for everyone who watches it.
Okay.